You have done something you regret because everyone around you agreed it was fine. Maybe you signed off on a plan you didn't believe in. Maybe you stayed quiet while a room full of people nodded along to something wrong. It felt easier in the moment. It always does. But the real answer for why this happens is found in a decision made by a king a very long time ago, one he made in under an hour and spent the rest of the night trying to undo. His name was Darius. He ruled an empire so large it needed 120 separate governors just to manage it. And beneath those governors, 3 men he trusted more than anyone. One of them was named Daniel. Daniel was good at his job. Almost too good. The other officials noticed that the king was planning to put Daniel in charge of the entire kingdom. And when powerful people feel threatened by someone better than them, they don't usually attack the person. They attack the rule. So they built one. They came to Darius with a proposal. For 30 days, no one in the kingdom could pray to any god or man except the king himself. Anyone caught doing otherwise would be thrown into a den of lions. It sounded like flattery. It sounded like loyalty. Darius signed it into law without asking who it was really aimed at. Here's the part that should stop you. Darius wasn't a cruel man. He wasn't looking for an excuse to kill anyone, let alone his most trusted advisor. So why did he agree to something so obviously dangerous? Psychologist Solomon Asch ran an experiment in the 1950s that explains exactly this. He put a person in a room with several actors and asked a simple question, like which of 3 lines matched the 4th line in length. The actors all gave the same wrong answer on purpose. And again, the real subject, the one person who could see the correct answer with their own eyes, changed their response to match the group. Not because they were confused. Because disagreeing out loud felt unbearable. Darius had a room full of people telling him this law was wise. Nobody said the name Daniel. Nobody had to. The pressure wasn't information. It was consensus. And consensus is one of the most convincing liars a person will ever meet. Daniel found out about the new law. And he did something that seems almost stubborn in its simplicity. He went home, opened his windows facing toward Jerusalem like he always had, and prayed. 3 times a day. Exactly as before. He didn't hide it. He didn't perform it either. He just kept doing the thing he had always done, in the open, the same way he always had. The officials were watching for exactly this. They reported him immediately. And now Darius understood. This law was never about honoring him. It was a trap built specifically to catch one man. The text says the king was greatly displeased with himself and worked until sunset trying to find a way to save Daniel. He looked for a loophole in his own law. He begged his advisors for an alternative. There wasn't one. In that empire, a king's decree, once signed, could not be reversed. Not even by the king who signed it. Think about what that means. Darius had more official power than almost anyone alive at that time. And he was completely trapped by a decision he made in a single meeting, surrounded by people who all seemed to agree. This is where the story becomes less about ancient Persia and more about you. Psychologist Irving Janis studied a very different kind of disaster centuries later, American foreign policy decisions made by rooms full of intelligent, capable advisors who somehow still steered into catastrophe. He called the pattern groupthink. It happens when a group values agreement so highly that members stop voicing doubts, even doubts they privately hold. The group feels confident. The group is often wrong. Darius's council wasn't stupid. They were unified. And unification, without a single voice willing to break it, is how good people end up authorizing something they will regret by nightfall. Daniel was lowered into the den. A stone was placed over the entrance, sealed with the king's own signet ring, so that nothing about the sentence could be changed by human hands, not even the king's. Darius went back to his palace, and the record says he refused food that night. He couldn't sleep. He wasn't lying awake wondering if he'd made a bold decision. He was lying awake knowing he'd made a weak one. At first light, Before anyone else was awake, Darius ran to the den himself. Not a servant. Not a guard. The king. He called out, his voice described as anguished, asking if the God Daniel served every day had been able to save him. And a voice answered from inside the den. Daniel was alive. Untouched. He told the king that his God had sent an angel to shut the mouths of the lions, because Daniel had been found innocent. Darius didn't just release him. He reversed course completely, ordering the men who had engineered the trap to face the consequence they had built for someone else. And he sent a message across his entire empire, telling every person in every province to fear and respect the very God Daniel had refused to stop praying to. Here's the twist worth sitting with. The lions weren't the test. The council room was. Every dangerous decision in this story happened before anyone got near a den. It happened in a meeting where flattery sounded like loyalty, where silence sounded like agreement, and where a king who wasn't cruel still signed something cruel because disagreeing out loud, even with his own instincts, felt harder than going along. You've been in that meeting. Maybe not with lions on the other side of the decision, but with something that mattered. A group chat where everyone agreed on a plan you had doubts about. A workplace where raising a concern felt like more trouble than it was worth. A room where staying quiet was the easiest, safest, and most convenient option available to you. The uncomfortable truth Asch's experiment revealed, and Janis's research confirmed decades later, is that most people don't need to be forced into agreement. They volunteer for it. Speaking up costs something in the moment. Staying silent costs something later, when you're the one lying awake at night the way Darius was. Daniel's choice wasn't loud either. He didn't organize a protest. He didn't argue with the new law in public. He just kept his window open and kept praying, exactly as he always had, and let his consistency speak for him. That might be the most useful part of this whole story. You don't always get to stop the room from agreeing to something wrong. But you get to decide whether you're still you once the room has decided. Tonight, when something feels easier to go along with than to question, remember the king who signed the easy thing and spent the night regretting it. And remember the man who simply kept his window open,